In life, we all encounter obstacles, and those obstacles come in all different shapes, sizes, and forms. The question is, how do we handle those obstacles? Do we attack them head on, or do we allow them to make us quit? Welcome to the No Quit Living podcast, where we aim to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up on themselves, their dreams, or their goals. We will interview successful people from all walks of life as they share their no-quit stories when they had the choice to give up or give in, but they didn't. We thank you for listening, and we hope to be that jolt of positivity as you go for your greatness. Welcome to episode number 115 of the No Quit Living podcast. I'm your host, Christopher J. Worth, and today's theme of the day is resilience. Our quote of the day comes to us from Steve Maraboli. Life doesn't get easier or more forgiving. We get stronger and more resilient. It is a complete honor and privilege to bring you today's episode. Our guest today definitely could have given up, but he chose not to. When the going got tough, he was tougher. The 5 words his doctor told him, "You have stage 4 cancer," is something that nobody wants to or is ready to hear. Not only is he still going strong today, but he is paying it forward in his very unique and special way. I would like to introduce David Dachinger. David, I'd like to welcome you to the No Quit Living podcast.
Thanks, Chris. I'm glad to be here today.
I appreciate you taking some time with us. So the first question we ask everybody is, are you ready to make it happen today?
Yeah, I'm totally ready to bring it.
Good stuff. So the number one objective of our show is to motivate and inspire listeners to never give up. And I was curious if you had either a story of perseverance or perhaps a challenging time that tested you and you could have given up or given in, but you didn't, and you kept going.
Yeah, that would be 2013. Basically went from being the poster child of good health and working in 2 dream careers to hearing 5 words that completely shattered all that. And those words were, "You have stage 4 cancer." So standing there in front of the doctor, my wife and I just were numb and realized that everything, life as we knew it up to that point, had all changed. And it was time to either get ready and busy living rather than get ready and busy dying. So it began an arduous treatment protocol for the next couple of months involving chemo, radiation, and ultimately surgery. And it put me into a place I'd never been to before, physically and emotionally, really a low point. And after the dust settled and I started to collect my perspective on all this, I decided to make choices. I had handed off the medical piece to the doctors, and I didn't really have a lot of power over that. But what I did have power and choice over was how was I going to view this whole experience, and what was I going to do different to kind of press the reset switch, and could I use this as a time to do some transformation on a personal level?
Wow. Well, I have not been given or heard those words from a doctor myself, so I can't imagine what you went through. So selfish question just for the title of our podcast is, during those tough times, what is it that kept you going every day? Was it stuff you were reading? Was it videos? Was it people in your corner? What kept you going each and every day during those challenging times?
Well, coming into it, prior to all this, I was always a fan of epic survival adventure stories, like true stories like Shackleton when he was trying to cross the Antarctic and he was trapped in the ice and he was able to actually rescue all of his men, but it took a lot of extreme survival. That kind of stuff inspired me my whole life. And I guess I always wondered, what would it be like, if I had an extreme survival adventure? So this turned out to be mine. And so during that whole experience of being treated for the cancer, I would, instead of looking at it like I'm a victim, I'd look at it like, okay, well, how's my body going to respond? Like, what can I do different to get through this with more ease and, make this a different kind of experience, not be a victim, but be curious and more of the explorer.
No, I like that. I think it's interesting. The word curious is something we often touch on our shows, and it's important in all areas of life. So I wanted to ask you, Dave, if you wouldn't mind just giving our listeners a little brief background of who you are and what you do today.
Sure. Well, leading up to prior to cancer, I had 2 dream careers as a composer, writing music for network sports, and also as a career firefighter. and those went on hold. But fortunately, I've resumed both careers since cancer. And fast forward to the doctors telling me I was finally clear after all the treatment. And we had an aha moment in the oncologist's office where we basically realized we had been creating meditations and we had been through this cancer patient and cancer caregiver journey. We could create this for other people that are going through the same things. So that began our Loving Meditations business.
Would you mind just briefly expanding a teeny bit on that business? I think it sounds very interesting. And the reason I ask that is I'll ask you the question later on, and maybe you'll be able to tell why. But I'm curious about what led you into actually creating a business from it.
Well, we had very personal knowledge and personal experience using those tools to get through the cancer journey with certainly greater ease, less discomfort, and with a more positive outlook. And as we met people that we would see in the infusion center or in the waiting rooms or in the doctor's office, we realized there's a great need for this. There is so much stress and so much difficult negative information to process. There's caregiver burnout that happens when someone's caring for their loved one day after day who's going through this kind of serious illness. So we kind of had the skills, we had the knowledge of walking in those shoes. And so we created an app that delivers our mindful wellness meditations to cancer patients and caregivers, which can be watched anytime on any device. And we also started to speak at support groups and also community cancer centers to help facilitate some of these people that are struggling with some of the same things that we struggled with.
I appreciate you sharing that, and it's something that we often talk about on some of our shows. Is oftentimes it's in different situations in life where people will have an idea or a concept, and most of the time, unfortunately, and I'm guilty of myself in ways, is you have an idea or a concept and you put it in the back burner and you put it for a later date. So I commend you for not only looking at something, seeing something, and obviously being in it there yourself firsthand and creating something to help others. So kudos to you for that. So I wanted to ask you, if you had to define yourself in only one word, what would that word be?
I think that word would be resilient. Just looking back over my life and all the ups and downs and challenges and how I've kind of bounced forward from those challenges, resilience would be the word.
That's a great word. And now just changing lanes, how do you personally define, or what does success look like for you?
Two things come to mind for success. One is that being of service to me is a huge, huge part of who I am. And every day that I know that I've been able to be of service and positively affect and contribute to people, whether it's through the fire service or through Loving Meditations, that feels like I've done something positive and something successful. And the second thing is creativity. I really enjoy waking up and creating either a piece of music or or video piece or writing something. So being a creative flow to me is a very successful way to be in my life.
No, I definitely agree. And as I touched on before, is the word curious has come up quite a bit in the last 3 or 4 months of our show. And I think it's the difference of staying where you are and being stagnant versus learning, improving. So the reason I asked the question about the meditation is, the next question I want to ask is if you have a specific morning or daily ritual that you swear by.
I do. I have a couple, and one that really works is it's sort of a multitasking one. So I'll go out and go for a run, and while I'm going for that run, I'll also get into sort of a mindfulness routine where I'm just trying to be present with the sounds and sights around me, but also expanding out, just moving outside of my own head so that I'm not completely focused inside, but starting to realize how much space there is around me, how much there is beyond just the shell of me personally. And so I'm able to kind of get two things done at the same time. I get into a zone by running and also use that as an opportunity to get present and just clear my head and feel like I'm more tuned in with what's going on in the outside world.
Now, the reason I asked that question is one of the often responses is meditation. And I just thought that was interesting because obviously you've taken your tough time and created your company. And I just think it was interesting because meditation is one of the probably 3 or 4 things that are mentioned almost every single episode, so I just appreciate you touching on that. So one of the things we like to talk about is different quotes, and I was curious if you have a favorite quote.
There's a few, but this one comes from a coach who coached a high school football team that it won like 151 consecutive wins, and then their streak was finally snapped. And what he said, among other things, was, "It's not how hard you fall, but it's how you get back up." And to me, that's really amazing. It's an inspiring and amazing quote.
That's a great quote, and being a sports guy myself, I think some of the best quotes out there are from coaches and players, because sports are just a natural transition into life, business, personal, family, because it's all about continuing to go, and there's no team that's ever won, or no coach that's ever won everything, and the question is what happens when you lose, or what happens when you get knocked down. So I appreciate you sharing that. So assuming the 20-year-old version of yourself would have listened, what is the one piece of advice you would have given to the 20-year-old David?
Right. Going back to that point in time, I would say everything always works out. It's not going to look that way in the short term, but you know, if you look at it over the long term, everything will always work out.
You know, I wish you had been there when I was 20, because I think it's a great piece of advice. And the question is, for me, is would the 20-year-old version of myself listen? I would say 50-50 at this point.
Yeah, right. That's the thing, right? Just it's one thing to have the messenger; it's another thing to be ready to hear the message.
No, that's a common answer to the question typically as well. Assuming I would listen, so it's definitely part of the puzzle. So, if you could have dinner with anybody, dead or alive, who would it be and why?
I really love reading the books of Bill Bryson. It would be, I think, it'd be a blast to eat dinner with him, because he's incredibly funny, but also so well versed. He writes books on history, on travel, and language, and I'm sure they would just be a fun and enlightening evening to have a meal with him.
No, it's interesting. That's the first time he's been mentioned, and that's the best part about answering this question. Is there are some common people that are said, but then there's also a lot of different people. So for me, always looking to learn and improve, I appreciate you sharing that with us.
Mm-hmm.
So David, if there was one thing you wish you knew 5 years ago, what do you think it would be?
Again, I think it's if I let go of attachment to outcome, that things work out better. It's so easy to buy into the way you want to see things work out, or how you want to see things unfold, or what you think the actual result is going to be. But in fact, like, I've had the most success when I just let go of that outcome and just focus on the steps that I need to take.
No, I like that, and I think that's important, because I think we all look at the outcome and the end result a little bit too much in some ways. And not that you shouldn't look at or shouldn't have a goal or objective, but I think definitely I've been guilty of focusing too much on the outcome, and I think you miss some of those things along the way.
Mm-hmm.
So here's an interesting question that we don't ask on every show, so it'll be a little bit new for you. But if you could snap your finger and fast forward to 1 year exactly from today, what is the one goal or thing you'd like to have accomplished 1 year from today?
Year from today, I would love for Loving Meditations to be in 10 hospital infusion centers around the country, and that we know that we're positively affecting even more people than we have up to today. So I'd love to see that we've made it into 10 more hospitals.
That's awesome. And you know what I love most about that is it wasn't a monetary or a financial goal, but it was about helping other people. So I appreciate that, because that's clearly one of the reasons why you do what you do. So I wanted to change lanes here into what we call our hot seat questions. And very simple, the only request we make is that you just spit out the first thing that comes to mind.
Okay, bring it.
Be careful. So if you had only one last meal and you could choose anything to have, what would you have?
I had a pretty amazing vegetable curry a couple of weeks ago. So it'd be this vegetable curry from a restaurant in Portsmouth, New Hampshire.
What is your favorite sport?
Favorite sport is obstacle course racing.
Favorite team?
1967 Green Bay Packers.
All right. My father's a huge Packers fan, so kudos on that one. All-time favorite movie?
I would say Gattaca. It's a sci-fi movie that actually doesn't involve an alien jumping out or a planet being destroyed. It's actually a very uplifting portrayal of what humans are capable of and when we remove our limiting beliefs.
All-time favorite book?
I'd say At Home by Bill Bryson.
Favorite singer or band?
Earth, Wind, and Fire always makes me feel good.
And then if you were in a foxhole and you could only have one person to have your back, who would you choose?
I would choose my buddy Tim, brother Tim from the fire department. He's a MacGyver. He's an Army vet. He's so well versed in everything from maps to he's a paramedic. He's the one guy you'd probably want to have next to you in a foxhole.
You said MacGyver. You had me there. So if I ever need him, I might have to call you up on that.
All right, you got it.
So what is the best advice you've ever received?
Best advice would be to quiet the mind.
That's easier said than done.
Mm-hmm.
So before we let you go, David, I wanted to ask if there's anything you're working on or you're releasing soon that you'd like to tell our listeners about.
Yeah, we're super excited. We're working on Loving Meditations TV, and this is it's basically a television program that goes into the waiting room of doctors' offices. It could be dentists' offices. We found that we got really stressed out by daytime TV and news, sitting there waiting to find out the results of a test or waiting for a scan. And this is calming programming with nature images and really relaxing music and some mindful messaging that is intended to help people feel better rather than more stressed out before they see their doctor. So we're super excited about that. It's already rolled out, and we're continuing to create new content for that.
That's awesome. And then any parting words you'd like to leave with our listeners?
Yeah, I think it's really important to keep an open mind, especially if you're dealing with a serious illness, that there is so much negative information out there, and to just keep your mind open and to don't buy into limiting beliefs. There are tons of examples where people did not buy into those beliefs. You could look at Roger Bannister, who broke the 4-minute mile, but up to then, everybody believed that it was not possible, and not only not possible, that people would probably die trying. So once he didn't buy into that belief, he was able to break the record, and once he did that, a lot of people were able to break the same record once they realized it was possible. So I'd say just don't buy into those limiting beliefs that are floating around out there.
No, that's some great advice, and I think Roger Bannister is a perfect example of somebody that didn't believe it. Not only did they not believe it, but they went out and they did it. So I appreciate you sharing that. And then last question is, what's the best way for our listeners to connect with you, find out a little bit about Loving Meditations, and also to connect or follow you as well?
Yeah, thanks, Chris. We can be found on the web at lovingmeditations.com and on Twitter at lovingmeditator, Meditator.
No, that's awesome. Now, David, I really, really appreciate you spending some time with us. I think you have a great story, but the best part for me is the fact that not only do you have a great story about keep going and not giving up, but now you found a way to give back to other people that are dealing with what you dealt with, and you're continuing doing with the TV, as well as your goal of getting into 10 more hospitals. So I commend you for not only keeping going and not giving up on your physical health component, but also more importantly is you're paying it forward for all the right reasons, which is something we often talk about on our show.
Well, thank you, Chris. Really loved your show and what your message is and the amazing people you have on there. So I'm going to look forward to listening to some more episodes coming up in the future.
I appreciate it. Thank you again.
Thanks as well. Take care.
Thank you for listening to episode number 115. As both a musician and a fireman, David has dealt with his challenges. When a stage 4 cancer diagnosis was presented to him in 2013, that was clearly a daunting obstacle. After battling cancer, David is still going strong in 2018. In addition to his musical career and being a fireman, David has also created his company, Loving Meditations, as a way to give back to and help other people that are battling cancer. While most people think of an idea or a concept, David took action. What I love about David is that in addition to overcoming this horrific disease, he decided to pay it forward by helping others. David mentioned the importance of letting go of the attachment to the outcome, as he feels if you do that, things typically work out better. In his parting words, David stressed both keeping an open mind and not buying into limiting beliefs. My question to you today is very simple. Do you have an open and curious mind, or do you believe those limiting beliefs of others? When you want something, do you just accept things as is, or do you go out and make them happen? I challenge you today, when you are hit with your next obstacle, don't just give up or give in. Keep fighting, keep paying it forward, and go for your greatness. And lastly, to our listeners, thank you. We truly appreciate your time, and we hope our episodes inspire you to keep on attacking life and never giving up. To quote Dr. Norman Vincent Peale, it's always too early to quit.